excitement in terms of getting data for policy making and decision making process. So very clearly data revolution has a lot to do with data, it's very obvious. But secondly, often we tend to forget that data revolution would also mean a change in institutions and a change in technology. And I believe yesterday has shown this very clearly for this agenda here, when we heard the gentleman presenting from Plan, when he talked about technology solutions and their limitations, and also the need to change institutions. The same is for statistical systems. To really reap the benefits of the data revolution, you probably need to change the national statistical systems. You need to change the way of how we produce and exchange data, thinking about public-private partnerships, for example. And finally, and I think that's something really new, is to focus on the use of data, the accountability, the use of data. The finality of data production is that this data is used, and hopefully for good use. And the link, in particular, of the civil society organization, their interest in the data revolution is always driven by their willingness to hold people to account and to see and to hold government officials to account and decision makers. So these three elements, data, institution and technology change, and the use of data, sketches out the horizon of data revolution. I'm sure we come back to this in a moment, but I wanted to, before I introduce the distinguished panelist, I wanted to introduce to you or show to you a video, Everybody Counts, Count Everybody, which really tries to make the link from yesterday, from more the technical side of civil registration and how complicated it is to vital statistics, and particular puts the emphasis on the use of the data. So if we could show the video, please.
If we don't have statistics, the optimal use of resources would not be achieved because government wouldn't know where to place its resources. The government wouldn't know how many women are in need of assistance because they die of childbirth. We wouldn't know if there is a need to talk to our youth. A country without statistics is one which will not really know where it is, one which is not able to use resources.
Statistics is being used by a lot of agencies, especially in the government, when it comes to health, when it comes to governance. Construction of roads, bridges, schools is really dependent on the registration of people who live in our jurisdiction.
Civil registration and vital statistics involves reporting all births, deaths, and even marriages that happen in the country. We want to know the number of births because these are used, for example, preparing for our vaccine requirements. And how about deaths? The leading causes of death are now due to lifestyle diseases. Imagine if we have to have investments in health and we are going to focus on infectious diseases when in fact the problem now is on lifestyle diseases. That's why it's very important that this information are available and we can prioritize where we should put our money.
We use the CRVS to help us design programs and projects suitable to the needs of our people. The City of Taguig is very much concerned with the welfare of the young. We offer 9 types of scholarships, and the basic requirement is that you are a resident of the City of Taguig. That's one of the advantage of having an efficient CRVS system.
Civil registration is the only evidence that we have of somebody who has been born, of someone who has passed away. Now, this is where civil registration is very important to us. Chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, gout, we can map those to certain villages, where they come from, Now, with that, we look at the diet. We look at what people are eating. As a small nation, we don't have much resources. We cannot rely only on treatment. We have to do a lot of preventive work.
The statistics that's collected and recorded contributes to national development purposes, specifically to design policies, program interventions for women and children. The statistics that we had gotten through helped us put together a national policy for children. That was the first main achievement, is having the availability of solid data to also point out that this was a policy issue and that it needed improvement.
There is still this lack of appreciation of the importance of CRVS. Most certifiers are unaware of the importance of proper documentation of causes of death and how it contributes to policy development and public health preventative measures that follows. Poor data means our country will rely on estimations from other countries. So that means policy planning for this country will be based on estimation from other countries. Governments must step up so that all births are certified, all deaths are certified in this country. Without that, we will continue to go through the same trail, and we're going to continue to have poor data for planning.
This was the video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I have seen it now for the second time, and I think it's quite powerful in terms of, on the one hand, showing very concretely what the issues are, but also what the challenges are, and also why we want to make progress in this area. So I believe we can share this video with you. For those of you who want to use it for advocacy purposes, please contact us afterwards. I mean, it has been produced to be shared. We will put it on YouTube, obviously, but most of you, feel invited to just take it and use it if you think it's useful. Now let's turn to our distinguished panelists, and I will introduce them one by one when they, join us for the discussion. And we have the great pleasure to have the Honorable Minister from Samoa with us, Lautafai Porcel. Thank you for joining us. From Samoa, he is overseeing the Statistical Institute. And Samoa is one of the countries who has made great progress in terms of data production, also from the administrative records. And we would be very interesting to hear from you. What is your experience? What is your advice, maybe coming from Samoa, a small island state on the one hand, but with specific challenges. But how do you see the situation in your country?
Just to talk. Thank you. Thank you, Yanis. First of all, greetings, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the panelists for today and thank Paris 21 for the opportunity to come here to share with you some of Samoa's experiences. As Johannes mentioned, a small developing nation that has made quite big insteps in its statistical information. If you'd bear with me, I'd just like to give you some information, and perhaps we can elaborate a bit more on in our discussions. This was prepared for me by my statistical people, and I'll just read it out. I hope it won't take too long. Civil Registration and Vital Statistics System, CRVS in Samoa, has recorded in the recent past significant improvements because of the well-coordinated efforts and successful cooperation among government, ministries, and the community. Through the ongoing implementation of the Samoa Bureau of Statistics National Strategy for the Development of Statistics, advocating for the use of available administrative sources of statistical data, has been encouraged and prioritized. As the CRVS system is now mandatory responsibility of the Samoa Bureau of Statistics as an integral item in the national statistical system, and the UN called for data revolution for Sustainable Development with a new international initiative to improve the quality of statistics and information available to people and government urgently demand the authority of our political leaders to support and lead the application and delivery of innovative strategic visions to facilitate complete registration of vital events. It also demands appropriate and effective actions by national statistical community as well as the technical and donor community. The process of registration of vital events in Samoa involves a number of key stakeholders and the community. As State Minister responsible for the development of statistics, allow me to share with you my vision on perhaps how we can strengthen and improve CRVS systems in Samoa. I believe promoting a multi-dimensional participatory approach is an educational awareness program on the use of vital statistics in policy and planning in the prevailing context of a small island developing state like Samoa would be the most effective way to improve registration on the vital events and the generation of vital statistics. More specifically in Samoa, village mayors and government-selected women representatives are in the government payroll and are part of the community governing structure. Just let me inform you that in Samoa there is no local or regional councils like most other countries. The ruling structure is the High Council of Chiefs, in which the women that are now in the payroll of the government and the mayors are part of. Including these people in the government payroll is an indication of the government's commitment to ensuring it reaches all areas of the grassroots level. They are required to report day-to-day occurrences of the vital events to the appropriate authority to facilitate the official proper registration of these events. In every village, the welfare and activity of the people is governed by the highest authority, the Village Council of Chiefs. The Council works closely together with the church leaders, especially on matters pertaining to spiritual welfare and general development of people. The involvement of local church ministers are vital in grassroots efforts, and they are powerful advocates. It is important that advocacy educational program on the use of statistical information to service policy framework must be organized and encouraged at the community level to ensure the active participation of community leaders at the grassroots level. I believe the use of just the media in Samoan setting will not be as effective as one could expect, given that there are obvious similarities in terms of culture and traditions in small islands developing states in Asia and the Pacific. I believe my vision will not only provide information benefits for the people, but also lead to improvements in the registration and generation of vital statistics, not only in Samoa, but in other similar states. Samoa intends to continue to build on successes so far and utilize modern and traditional social structures to continue to improve its data collection strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for sharing your very concise statement and also for sticking to the time. The idea is we would have from each of the panelists a short intervention, and then we will be opening up for your questions and comments to have it really very interactive, as I said in the beginning. What I take away is you mentioned very much in the beginning, you talked about coordination. At the end of your presentation, you talked about advocacy, in particular at the local community level, to advocate for the importance of this documenting of those kind of events. And in between, you were talking quite a lot what I would call under the umbrella of tiers of government and decentralization, and which again shows that we are not talking only about a statistical issue, but it's civil registration on the one hand, which is linked to the organization of the state and about different level of governments, which is slightly complicated. And in your country, it's obviously very different than in a country like India or China, with a very different size. So we see there are very specific challenges in certain countries. Now, we have the great pleasure to have Dr. Lisa Bersales with us, national statistician from the Philippines. And she is a world-leading expert, I would say, in this region on the topic. And she can bring in both sides, because you have been working on the one side, you are following very closely the statistical part, but you are also in the civil registration part. So we would be very interesting to hear from you, based on your experience in the Philippines, but maybe also beyond. What would be your advice, how to move this agenda forward? How can we strengthen the linkages between national statistical offices and the civil registration agenda and the part of the government who is in charge of this? So if you could kindly share with us your vision.
Thank you, Johannes. First, I would like to thank Paris 21 and Johannes for organizing this session and inviting me to be a participant in the panel. It is indeed a privilege to be part of a discussion which actually emphasizes the importance of the national statistics offices in our regional action framework, the one that we are plan to declare at the end of this week. National statistics offices are mandated to provide official statistics used for policy development and planning, as well as for monitoring countries' progress in achieving national and global development goals. So I have three messages, actually. The first one is that, as I've said earlier, the national statistics offices are mandated to produce official statistics, and thus they are going to play a central role in achieving the third goal of our regional action framework, which is accurate, complete, and timely vital statistics, including causes of death, are produced based on registration records and are disseminated. So that's the first message I have. The national statistics offices are central to achieving the third goal of the regional action framework. The other is very similar to our distinguished minister's message. Coordination among actors in CRVS is crucial. And the main actors in CRVS are civil registrar, typically in the Ministry of the Interior or Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Health that plays a crucial role in notifying relevant authorities that a vital event has occurred, and the National Statistics Office as the central authority of official statistics within a country. In the Philippines, it is unique that the national statistician is also the civil registrar general. And thus, we have this advantage of a seamless flow of data from the civil registration office to the vital statistics office. Despite this, however, we still have to have good coordination with the Ministry of Health and the local civil registrars who are actually under the heads of the local government units under the Ministry of the Interior. Because of this, we have created actually an interagency committee already on CRVS, and of course, the Ministry of Health is there. We hope to also include the Ministry of Interior. We are just actually starting this interagency committee. But these coordination have already been starting for a long time, because we have our committees where we discuss how to introduce and how to train people, health workers specifically, the doctors, to fill up the death certificates, and how to fill up the forms using the ICD-10 in particular. I would also like to report that the Philippine Statistics Authority, which is now our National Statistics Office with 3 additional former agencies with it, also have these biennial workshops wherein we talk to almost 1,700 local civil registers, and we also have a separate biennial workshop with our solemnizing officers, the ones that fill up the marriage certificates. The message I'm saying is that there should be a good flow of data from the civil register to the NSO, and this is achieved through a very good mechanism of coordination and ideally a coordinating committee. My third message is that CRVS should be viewed in the context of data revolution for sustainable development. So even as we are discussing here CRVS, we should not forget that our discussion is part of a bigger framework, which is the framework of data revolution for sustainable development. This is really for post-2015 sustainable development agenda. And thus there are many issues that go with such contextualizing the discussion of CRVS. These include, of course, discussions on how to fill up gaps, how to deal with these different sources of data, how to put them together, given that they may not be harmonized. With these three messages, I would like to recommend two specific action, but these are really big ones. The first one is that each country form coordinating bodies within the country to provide better coordination among ministries from the subnational to the national level, and these are involving CRVS. But we should also not forget that we should continue our coordinating mechanism in the regional level in Asia and the Pacific. The other one is that I suggest the review of the national statistics offices of their national strategies for development of statistics. So these are the programs of the different countries on statistics development in the country. And the review should include the initiatives of CRVS that we're talking here, and they should be among the priority. And of course, updating the corresponding medium-term expenditure framework for the statistical development programs. This will then be the basis, these documents would be the basis for our development partners in assisting us in achieving CRVS goals. This could include capacity building, development or enhancing CRVS systems. I would like to also report that in the Philippines, our civil registration system is computerized, and we have done this through public-private partnerships. So we have a private partner that maintains and develops the computerized system for us. So it's a very good partnership that helps us get the data from the local level up to the national level, and for us to be able to provide documents to our people. In this regard, I would like to highlight my opinion that Paris 21, who organized this session, could be an important player in this suggestion of mine. I emphasize the need to view CRVS data systems as administrative databases. And this is not new because most of the countries actually produce information from administrative data. In the Philippines, for example, we produce foreign trade statistics from our Bureau of Customs, and these are administrative-based data. We produce some agricultural statistics from our authorities, specifically Sugarcane Authority, cotton, fiber, etc. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is that administrative-based data have this strength of cost efficiency, so we are able to get the data more cheaper than when we do surveys or censuses. And they could be timely and more frequently generated. However, there are some inherent weaknesses of administrative data, mainly on quality and coverage and completeness, and this should be part of the discussion of the national statistics offices in their review of their statistical development program. With that, I give the floor to Johannes for more discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your really excellent intervention. I think you bridged between two things. One is you gave us a very detailed, clear advice on how to move forward and how and what the lessons learned are from your country. It has been echoed what you were saying, the coordination issue, and I think we come back to this all the time, that coordination is so important. Now, it's also a saying that everybody wants to coordinate, but nobody wants to be coordinated, which is a slightly problem. So I think we need at some point to unpack the coordination issue a little bit more. What does it mean in reality? But on the other hand, you gave us a good tool, possibly, for organizing the coordination, and this is the NSDS, the National Strategies of Development Plans for Statistics, which could be some sort of one coordination mechanism or tool, not only internally, but also dealing with the external partners. So thank you so much, but you also brought in the international context. You set the context and you spoke about data revolution and the SDGs. And this directly brings me to our next panelist, Haishan Fu. She has been introduced. We are very privileged to have Haishan here because I understand, Haishan, when I was not yet working on these topics, you have been here you have been leading this work in this region. You have headed the UN ESCAP statistical division, and I understand that this was an issue for quite some time. And it's good to see it have come now to the top of the agenda. But you have also been in the expert group for the UN Secretary General. So some sort of an initial question to you would be also, is this now the moment and time to make a difference? I mean, we have been working, some of you have been working on this for a decade. Now you have all this attention, you have a ministerial conference. So would you agree with me, this is now the moment to make a difference? And then if you can elaborate a little bit more from your perspective, how it should be done.
Sure. Thank you, Johannes. First of all, I really want to thank Paris 21 for organizing this, because we all know since Paris 1 was established 15 years ago, it has been a real force behind advocating for the improvement of national statistical systems and really in linking the different partners together to coordinate our effort and to provide a space for us to share our ambitions and our knowledge and our practices. So I really want to thank Paris 21, and I also know by taking up this CRVS initiative as one of the priorities in your work program, you're going to be another really force in accelerating the progress we desire. Definitely, I would say there's no better time for us to push for the improvement for civil registration of vital statistics. This is the agenda has been neglected for too long. And we have been always arguing based on the false assumption that with the competing development agenda, this is our lower priority. But the ongoing post-2015 agenda formulation process has really provided unprecedented political recognition of why we need to really focus on improving CRVS. Because the post-2015 development agenda itself is really about inclusive and participatory approach to development. It's really about leaving no one behind. That will be really force us to really think very boldly and creatively how we can ensure that we will not leave anyone out of the picture by really registering everyone, giving everyone the legal identity, the opportunity to fulfill their right and to seek the opportunities that they really deserve in life. At the same time, I think this discussion is also being supported by the ongoing discussion of the data revolution for sustainable development, because the ambition we're trying to reach has to be enabled by the technological feasibilities and other arrangement that required for us to really realize what we set for ourselves to achieve. The ongoing data revolution discussion, for me, really means two things, very fundamentally. One is that we need a mind shift in our approach to pursue development data improvement. That is, it has to be positioned as a development agenda in its own right. We all know that information is important. There has been plenty of discussion, so I don't want to repeat that. But I really want to say that as a world community, development community, from national government to international development partners, we really need to see data as the soft infrastructure for development. We really need to invest in it. We've been talking a lot about the political economy of data, but we don't talk enough about the economics of data, how the data will really bring returns to growth, to human development in its many forms. So therefore, I'm really happy that in the short month and a half, with this idea being put forward, the Secretary General's Independent Expert Advisory Group, in its report on the data revolution for sustainable development, really made this bold statement that improving development data is a development agenda in its own right. So it's about really, we must have a mind shift in order to really pursue a data revolution. The second point I want to make is that this mind shift doesn't mean we will shift away from the basics. That is, I know everybody is pinning our hopes on how to use the new data, new big data, how to build private-public partnership in order to innovate, to apply the digital technology to improve the way we gather information. But it's really, really important that we don't forget that there are core functions of any government in the world, developed or not yet fully developed, to really carry out these core functions that for the purpose of giving the recognition to each individual and provide the opportunity for them to fulfill their human rights for the sake of good governance and efficient public administration, for us to really do the basic data collection through civil registration, through censuses, through the right kind of household surveys, that for us to have the basic data that underpin the core part of the development data need for us to pursue the sustainable development. I really see the ambition of the Sustainable Development Agenda need to be matched with a very bold data revolution. This is not just about data for monitoring the goals and target, but it's about the kind of information that will help us to understand and manage sustainable development at every level, not just for government, not just for development partners, not just for business to make better business, but for individuals themselves to have the right information they can use, they can understand in order to really seek out and be lifted out of poverty through a collective effort. So I think CRVS is such a unique example of how these two forces, the development agenda itself and the data revolution, come together, because it is about really pursuing the improvement of CRVS as a development process. It is about really leveraging the resources for the new technology, to accelerate the progress we desire. Now, I know even in this region, there are already good examples of how new technology, with the right legislation, with the political commitment, how technology could help us to accelerate the progress. We have heard that in Bangladesh, the Digital Bangladesh initiative is really giving force behind the accelerating the progress, improving CRVS. We know in the Philippines how the e-governments, how the computerization of our system is bringing real process. So we really need to come together to really explore the potentials and set the right rules of the game for us to manage the risk while harnessing the real benefit of this data revolution. But this is not just about generating the right kind of data. I remember one of my friends or colleagues sitting somewhere in this room on her Skype. She had, under her profile, she had a statement, "Only used data are useful data." I think it's just so true. The real value of data, what we're talking about, is only materialized when we really make use of it. This is where I see improving CRVS, improving the use of data will be generated through the CRVS system. It's really important, and this is require us to really work together. The civil register part will improve the process of registering data, and the health ministries will make sure all the births are being registered and deaths being certified and so on and so forth. forth. But national statistical offices have such a unique role to play in this process that you can help set the standard or guide the data registration process, and you will be the one to convert the registration record into vital statistics, and which can be further used for real policy making. So I really see this as a real collaborative effort in really not only improve what we produce, but also in terms of how we translate those information produced into real value through its effective use. So with that, I just want to stop here, and I just feel that there's no better moment for us to push for this agenda, and because we will have the political commitment and the technological potentials for us to pursue this credibly. So thank you.
Thank you, Haishan, for this very powerful plaidoyer, and also for the echoing what has been said before, that in this agenda the national statistical offices have to play a role. But I think you also said something very important when you talked about the data revolution and the two elements. You said once is the basics, be focused on the basics, but you also spoke about the change in mindsets. I'm by training a development economist, so I'm to some extent also new to the area of statistics and capacity development. But what I learned is over the last 1.5 years, since this term data revolution is out, and since I have been to very different data events, from data playgrounds to data drinks to data breakfast to whatever, it's interesting to see if you bring in different communities, the civil society organizations, the think tanks, the National Statistical Office people who work on the ground, and if you bring them to one room and have them discuss about data, sometimes a mind change takes place, and sometimes they understand better the day-to-day struggle of national statistical offices, in particular developing countries, where many of us don't know that there are only 3 or 4 people in charge. And then the national statistical offices people also understand that maybe the policymaker is not waiting for the last number, but he needs to have the number much quicker, and he needs to have some sort of quality. But sometimes there is a trade-off to be made between the timely production of data and to have the data in time. So we also talk here quite a lot about different trade-offs that we need to manage. Also, I believe in this area specifically about pushing forward, and as you were saying, Haishan, this civil registration and vital statistics moment, there's now the moment, but we might have to do also at some point some trade-offs. Which brings me to Helge Brunborg from the Statistics Norway. He is a senior research fellow, and he will, I understand, share us some experience, in particular from Norway. Norway is one of the most developed countries. It always tops all the rankings in this world that we can do, either on human development or whatever, and it obviously also has led some of this initiatives. So we are very happy to have Helge here with us. Helge, if you could share with us your perspective.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm happy to share some experiences we have made in Norway. We have a very long experience with the CRVS, starting about 300 years ago by the church, registering burials and baptisms and marriages. But 50 years ago, we started and introduced a central population register based on the census and unique ID numbers. So we have 50 years of experience with that, and that has been extremely useful for both administration, for planning, for statistics, and for the population. We can make population statistics every day, in fact. And we don't do any regular censuses any longer. The last one was in 2001. We can now make a census every year. Collecting information about population by age and sex and gender, family size, educational attainment, labor force participation. Not everything, but quite a lot from administrative registers. It's also an advantage for the individuals, as we don't have to do the income tax reform return forms any longer. It's done by the tax authorities, sent to us for approval or revision, and returned. Previously, it took several days to do that, and it was a big hassle. Johannes talked about big data, but we are already using big data. You know, we have done it for many years. Say the tax authorities get data from banks and insurance companies, and we can produce statistics on that, but it's also used to, say, produce income statistics for population, say, income distributions. Now, since Statistics Norway has this long experience, we are very pleased to be and happy to share our experience with interested countries. We have recently, actually last week, published a report on CRVS, which is, I have some copies with me. In this report, for example, we list 6 stages of civil registration, and 2 more sophisticated and modern levels. The first stage is just a regular paper-based system. The second is when you computerize births and deaths, so you're getting a register of births and deaths. But that is not a population register because nobody is deleted. By population register, I mean a register where everybody is included and information about all the individuals is updated regularly. Now, the third stage is computerizing all vital events, and to the regular vital events, I would like to add migrations. So I strongly argue that in the long run, you should try to include migration, also both internal or foreign migration, which is easier to capture than internal migration, because it's, you could say it's very vital for an individual to move, but it's also vital and essential for the for statistical purposes to know where people live and when they move. The fourth stage is introducing a unique identification number, which then can be used to link information from other sources, say from, because say from a health register, a register of educational attainment, and so forth. And that's what we are doing, our income register, tax register. And the fifth is establishing a comprehensive population register, as I said, which is now for all Nordic countries and some few other countries. The sixth and most advanced stage is actually when you have several registers working together, register of births and of enterprises and of real property that work together, which is very useful. Now actually we can link GIS data to real property and also to addresses where people live, so we can calculate and see how many people live exposed to traffic noise or to pollution, etc. So thank you for now, and I'm open to questions. And
thank you so much, Helge, for this intervention. And I think I can really recommend to have a look at the paper that has been produced by the colleagues of Statistics Norway. It's really very interesting. It's very practical oriented, and so I think you find it outside. One point that hasn't yet come up, but what you said in some sort of bypassing, you were reminding us that Norway has obviously the most comprehensive system in this world, where even a census is no longer needed. And you say you can even produce a census by the day or by a year or whatever. Some societies, among others, the German society, I can speak only for the Germans, they wouldn't feel very comfortable with that, I can tell. So to some extent, this decision on what kind of system you want to go for, it depends a lot on how a society feels about sharing data, about privacy and confidentiality. So I think that's another layer for interesting, for our discussions. How far do you want to go? What is kind of data do you want to share? And I think Norway is very, very specific country where there's a lot of trust in government. It's a, you know, in terms of, even if you can see the tax rates, people are happy possibly to pay taxes because they think they get good returns in public services. There are other countries where people might be less happy. So I think one has to take this into account, the specific society's you know, wishes, and therefore it's a unique agenda for each country. So without further ado, I think it's now time to turn to you, to the audience. Please, if you want to make a statement, a comment, a question to the panelists, please, if you could kindly put up the flag, if that is possible, or otherwise raise your hand. And please use this opportunity to ask, as I said, some questions or make some comments. So the floor is open. I have the gentleman in the first.
Thank you, Chair.
Please.
Thank you for the wonderful or insightful presentation from all the distinguished delegates, the panelists. And thank you as well for your wonderful clips and inspiring clips. Well, we haven't, this deliberation has been focused more on the collection of data and leaving no one out of the picture or something. But while we collect enormous data, we sometimes be mindful of how to, build a trust on the data the data collected and the information generated and the statistics itself. How do you build the trust from the top level decision makers on the use of data and the statistics? I'm a demographer, so working in the Ministry of Health and heading the HMS unit. So as an information guy, sometimes we lose, the decision makers say like the data you produce from the administrative or the routine data is, some vital statistics are not, reliable. Or some, there's different ways of estimates, like from the different sources of data. So how do you draw trademark the use of data from different sources of data available? For instance, within the national system, the National Statistics Organization have a different estimates of, data, and the Ministry of Health have different estimates of data. Even at the global, UN system has different estimates of data, though we are mindful of different techniques or the models used. So we'll be, much appreciate how you draw the line, thinner line on the use and sources of data. Thank you, Chair.
Could you just please introduce yourself so that we can follow up?
My name is Sring Jamso, so I work for Ministry of Health. I'm a demographer heading the HMS unit. Thank you. Bhutan.
From Bhutan?
Bhutan.
Or, if I may? Bhutan.
So, sorry,
Bhutan.
Bhutan.
Okay. Thank you. What I would suggest, we take a couple of questions and then I turn back to the panelists and you decide which question you want to take. Can I see some more signs of, please, Malaysia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to Paris 21. First of all, I'm very impressed with the team, leave no data behind. When I first reading that, I was saying, okay, delete the data. Or it could mean that, please include everybody, which is very good. My question would be, thank you to all the honorable members. I think we have covered the front end, but the concern that I have is about the policy that we have when we collect the data. If we are not very clear with the policy, what goes into the system is what is needed and what is not wanted. And for Malaysia, we have notification coming from the hospital, Ministry of Health, and also coming from the police. And that raised some eyebrows to certain community that we talk to, but that is stipulated in our act. If they are not observed by people from the Ministry of Health, designated doctors or midwife, they cannot enter the system that we notify the National Registration Department. They have to go to the police, and then police will notify the birth or death. So if anybody has any other experience, similar or otherwise, I would like to share that.
Thank you so much. Next we have Bhutan and then followed by Cook Islands.
Thank you very much. I think there's been a lot of stress on the need for coordination. And when it comes to coordination, I think it's easier said than done. And you've hit the nail on the head by saying that you need coordination, but you don't want to be coordinated. So mine is not a question exactly, but a statement that, when there needs to be a coordination set up among various stakeholders, I think there needs to be some sort of a political commitment or someone sitting high above to, bring about coordination. Thank you.
Thank you. Cook Islands, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the panel for sharing your experiences. Appropriate that Bhutan made a statement on coordination. I just want to share our experience in the Cook Islands in achieving the coordination amongst our stakeholders. The NSDS program, or we like to call it a program, really it's a framework, but this has really advanced and accelerated the VS in the CRVS. What we're saying is we can say that CR in the Cook Islands is 100%, but VS has a long way to go. So in terms of getting that coordination and partnership amongst the stakeholders, the NSDS that was launched in the Cook Islands with assistance from Paris 21 and SPC, this has brought all stakeholders together and a commitment by our government. So we aim to launch our NSDS in 2015 in May, and this is one of the best program or framework that has been delivered in the country. And now the buzzword in the Cook Islands is NSDS. So it's just an experience I want to share, and our government is committed, and I urge countries to take on the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this very positive experience. I suggest I turn now back to the panel and give them a chance to respond to your 4 interventions. We have heard some questions around trust, how we can build trust. The coordination question came up, NSDS, so I think there's, for all of you. But please think we can do a second round of interventions, questions. So if you don't mind to think about a question, there's still time for this after the panelists have had a chance to reply. But I wanted to start with the minister. In particular, one question about the political support for this agenda. Now, a government has many different agendas, and this agenda is, in terms of the government, probably not always at the highest level. And you might to compete in terms of resources giving, because it also costs money. How did you convince your ministers, fellows, and those who finally take the decision that this is a very important agenda? And how did you in Samoa manage to get this coordination going? Is it basically because you were quite small and it's maybe easier than in a bigger country, or what is the reasons for this kind of success that you had?
Thank you, Johannes. I believe from a political point of view that statistics, if you cannot have information, if you don't have the information, you cannot plan. That's as simple as that. You cannot plan at any level if you don't have reliable information. Now, how I went about convincing my fellow ministers was that message, exactly that message. Every part of their ministries have a part to play in providing, not only in initiating, but also providing accurate data, so that as a country that we can plan properly. We may be easier, it may be easier in the smaller islands because, of the size that we may be able to reach out. But I'm sure there are lessons that can be learned from how we have managed, or we have tried to engage as many people from the top level right down to the grassroots level and make them feel that the information that we are trying to collect from them is information that is critical to the bigger picture, the development of Samoa as a nation. The whole country benefits from the information that people need to give. Is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's part of the experience and the success that we have had so far.
And in terms of coordination, that's.
We have, from the higher levels, from the ministers, cabinet ministers, we have discussed on how, as I said, the ministers, the ministries, individual ministries, can work in conjunction to getting this information into the statistics bureau. And we've done this with like we have a select committee that is representatives from the different ministries, to the health, the police, the education, the core stakeholders in the government levels that regularly meet to ensure that there is that coordination, that the working together is continuing, and that the information we're getting is current, and that it's been produced is the best way that is going to be useful for future, for policies and government initiatives.
Thank you. It seems that one of the key factors of success seems to be the buy-in from the highest level of government. I mean, if you can convince the highest level of government to make it happen, then you are more likely to succeed, if not. Now, Lisa, I mean, probably there are some questions that you would be very well placed to answer, but there was one specific question was on the terms of privacy and confidentiality issue that came up a couple of times, how to deal with this. How did you do this in the Philippines, and what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, actually, I would like to answer the question, the bigger question of trust. How do we achieve trust of all users of the data that we produce? The advantage of the national statistics offices is that there is a clear set of fundamental principles of statistics that all member states have agreed to with the UN coordinating. So one of the fundamental principle is independence and confidentiality. And these particular set of fundamental principles are clearly followed by the different statistical offices. And of course, this is widely disseminated. So that's one, that the national statistics offices adhere to a clear set of fundamental principles of statistics, which include independence and confidentiality. The other, in the Philippines, if I may share, how do we add to that to get the trust? One is that we ensure that we have these interagency committees as well as technical committees of specific set of stakeholders that help the National Statistics Office, the PSA, Philippine Statistics Authority, in developing appropriate methodologies. So we have an interagency committee as well as a technical committee on poverty that helps us ensure that methodologies in estimation of poverty are above or at par with other countries. And these committees could include membership from the academe or the research institution. The other is the importance of the website of the agency, of the National Statistics Office. We publish our technical notes for everybody to read on how we produce the statistics. Also, when we introduce new innovations and methodologies and concepts and frameworks, we have this fora to disseminate these innovations, where we also ask, again, users, producers, and technical people to provide interventions on what we do. And I remember what Kanshan said, that the ultimate test of the data that you produce is that the data are being used. So we really see to it that we put together these people who will be using our data so that they can help us vet and validate what we produce. May I also just talk about coordination as well? I feel that it is very important. One important factor to achieve good coordination would be legal frameworks. So in the Philippines, we are fortunate that we have the law just passed last year that created the Philippine Statistics Authority. And this is the legal framework for us to do CRVS and all the other mandates producing of official statistics. But part of the legal, of the law, is the creation of our board, This is the policy board, what we call the Philippine Statistics Authority Board. And this board is composed of the ministers of all those ministries that generate administrative data. So these would include representation from the Ministry of Health, even the public works and highways, science and technology. There are actually 25 of them. So that's a challenge really to put all of these ministers together in one meeting, all 25 of them. But that is very important in the sense that they are part of the policies that the Statistics Office does in terms of generation of statistics. The other is, as mentioned by our colleague at from the Cook Islands, another very important document for clear coordination would be the framing of the NSDS, the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics, because that will be the document that everybody looks at when we look at work that needs to be done on statistics. I would like to say that one of the members of the Philippine Statistics Authority Board, the board of our National Statistics Office, is the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. So because he sits there, he listens to, or he or she listens, for now it's a he or she listens to the financing that is needed to produce all of the statistical information needed by planning minister for planning purposes. And thus, this kind of coordinating mechanism from the top level is very important. There are coordinating mechanisms at different levels. So after the ministers, we have the other coordinating bodies, as I have mentioned, the interagency committees, the technical committees. And that is how we are able to do coordination in the Philippines. Of course, there are some weaknesses there. We have to be careful as to who we choose to be part of the coordinating committees at different levels. We have to see to it that the person that is there really is committed to do the work of coordination, so that when we call meetings, they are there. So far, we have such people that help in these issues.
Thank you so much. You mentioned one term, money. And this brings me to Haishan and World Bank. World Bank has a lot of money, we believe, or maybe not, after all the reform. So Haishan, we also heard about an investment plan that the World Bank with a couple of other international organizations has designed. You may want to answer, come back to one of or two of those questions, but if you could also let us know in terms of, we all agree we would need some money to put into the system. Where should it come from? And how could it be, how can the international community and the World Bank and other international organizations help to find the necessary resources?
Sure. So, thank you very much. Maybe one thing I should really stress is that the improvement for the CRVS system is really about addressing how we support country government to build effective institutions. And because the functions of government cannot be and should not be replaced by others. This is about registering every citizen, every birth, and so on and so forth. At the same time, it generates effective functioning registration system will generate the kind of statistics that also other sources cannot replace its role. So we have no choice but really put in give the priority and support it. And related to this, I'm really happy to say, I think many of you have already heard, recently the World Bank, and together with WHO and others, have developed a scaling up plan to improve the civil registration and vital statistical systems, and also under the framework for improving maternal and children's health, there's a trust fund being established in order to see how to best support country effort. But when it comes to, actually, this Friday, there will be a side event on this topic organized by my colleagues from the World Bank. So I really encourage all of you to go and see how we can really implement this ambitious plan to support countries. But in terms of financing for data, I'm really glad through the recent discussions and also through the UNSG's independent advisory group, financing for development data has been recognized as one important stream, one important element in the financing for development discussion overall. So what we're doing at the World Bank is really working with other multilateral development banks and UN and foundations and other key players to really into what will be the core financing need for improving development data across countries, especially in support of countries with rather weak development data systems, and hoping that we would have some concrete recommendations in terms of financing instrument and recommendations to be included in the discussions in Addis in July next year, which is this financing for development discussions and conference, and we are really advocating for this issue to be adequately reflected. But coming to this financing for CRVS or data in general, one thing is very important to recognize: the role of national government is critical. The foundation for any financing scheme is domestic financing, because this is about, indeed, building the core functions of government, and it's the real responsibilities, accountabilities of any national government. At the same time, we also understand there are countries that will need support from international development communities, and it's at the same time, with the kind of private-public partnership we're envisioning for the future of the development data, we also need to crowd in the private sector, incentivize the private sectors to invest and to support us to really leverage the data as public goods to increase investment, and also to ensure that data produced will be open, accessible, and effectively used. So we're very much engaged in this topic, in this discussion, and I again welcome you all to the ESCAP event on Friday when this will be discussed. And one thing that Lisa has given very eloquent answers to some of the ways to ensure the trust in the data we generate. But at the same time, I think I want to allude to these other issues, is how we can leverage the technology to ensure that we will build a registration and a vital statistical system that will have the interoperability to be linked up and integrated with other data. For example, geospatial information, location information, or other administrative data, so that the power of data from the civil registration system will be really realized, because we will know that we need localized solutions to development issues, and only when those data are being linked together will be able to not only verify the qualities from certain sources, but also to ensure that by leveraging those other information, that we'll have the broad databases to look into issues and even hidden issues that right now we cannot address. So when we started this session, you mentioned the 6 stages of developing the registration system. I was saying, can we bypass some of the initial stages now that we do have the technological solutions, but how we leverage that with the right level of political commitment and the institutional arrangement to leverage the technology to bypass, so that we can have a really promising system to give what we need.
Thanks, Haishan. This brings me directly to Helge. Can we leapfrog? Do we need all to wait 300 years like Norway, or 50 years? Or I mean, what can countries who are a little bit behind the curve? How can they leapfrog? What would you advise? How can we use all these new technologies, data? What should countries do in order to avoid maybe waiting another 50 years to build up all these systems?
Yeah. It doesn't take 50 years to develop a system that can be used, that you can benefit from that in a few years. And of course there should be leapfrogging. But that doesn't mean that the country should aim for the most advanced system right from the start. but it should think about how to get to a more advanced system. Say, registration of migrations is very under-registered. It's very difficult to register both out migrations and in migrations in an area and for a country. But perhaps countries should consider how to register migration, how to develop a system for that, because it will be very useful. But of course, you can start a good system of registering births and deaths without registering migration, but you should open up for that. You should also open up for introducing identification number. And there are questions about coordination and trust. And I think Lisa mentioned some of the elements of that. One is legislation that protects data and protects institutions, their own roles. Data should be shared. That's also important, but also there needs to be legislation for that. Both aggregate data and individual data need to be shared. I think you mentioned that there was a flow of data from the civil registration system to the statistical office, but there should also be a flow of data in the other direction, because statistical and other use improves data. It improves coverage, improves quality, say duplicates are detected, you can detect strange age distributions. If you find several people who are 150 years old in the system, in statistical tables, you know there's something wrong. So it is very important where there's statistical use. So the trust develops if you think that the other institutions do well and that the government performs well and do not exploit its population. Thank you.
Great. To what? Ajahn, do you want to?
You want to respond to what she said first?
Yeah, if you.
Yeah. Okay. No,
I didn't.
No,
what I would suggest is, as I promised, we have still time for 2 or 3 quick comments and questions if there are. Otherwise, I would turn back. If there, can I see a sign of hand? If somebody still wants to intervene? There, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Carla Abdusar. I'm a consultant, actually, but formerly worked with WHO. First, I'd like to congratulate the panel. I think they've made some really interesting, thought-provoking, raised some thought-provoking issues. I'd also like to congratulate the title of the panel, CRVS and a Data Revolution. I never thought I'd see those two concepts put together, because CRVS is not, in principle, a revolutionary idea. But I think the idea of putting it with a revolution is a very good one. But as we know, revolutions can be quite disappointing sometimes in the long run. So I think the challenge that we have is how to avoid that this becomes another disappointment. Because it isn't the first time that the global community and countries have really tried to strengthen CRVS. And I think one of the problems that we have is sustaining the interest. Because we will not, although we heard from Norway, we can achieve results pretty quickly, but it's something that takes time. It takes time and long-term commitment by governments, and not just today's government, but tomorrow's government as well. We know governments change. This needs to be part of the fabric of any country. So how can we ensure that that happens and that that interest is maintained over time? And I'm going to suggest one additional, in addition to all the things that people have said, a couple of additional points. One is the concept of trust. I think it goes beyond the trust in the data. It's the trust at that very basic level. When a family goes to register a child, they have to trust that system, that government system, that they are going to gain something from it, that it's not going to be a system that's there designed to exploit them. And I think the role of civil society organizations in helping to ensure that that's the case can be tremendously important, because we do hear cases of people asked to pay money, people exploited when they go to make a registration. Yet we need some oversight of this whole process, and I think probably that needs to come through civil society. The second problem is that I think we need to address is the sort of global architecture for civil registration. We've talked a lot and fully agree that we need better coordination in countries, between sectors, between different ministries, between agencies. But we also need that at global level, among the partners and among the institutions. And I would say that up to now, I don't think that the global development architecture has well served us for civil registration of vital statistics. So I hope that as part of the revolution, we'll start to rethink the way agencies are organized at global and at regional levels so that they can provide consistent and long-term support to countries in their efforts to improve their systems.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to take the floor? Otherwise, I can't see. So let me turn back then to the panelists. Haishan, you want to?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you let Carla speak first, because I really want to recognize Carla as a passionate, committed force behind what we are here. We've been really working with Carla with such a great pleasure because her passion is very infectious and her insight has been very critical in guiding us to here. I had wanted to address the issue of sustainability, and I'm glad Carla really highlighted it. But just related to that point, I want to mention this issue that this regional program or global program or Paris 21 or whoever are really supporting this should address is that we don't know enough about the effective use of vital statistics from the civil registration system. How effective they are, what is the real benefit. We know they're important, but we advocate that based on a lot of intuitive understanding, but not enough analytics. So I would really, I think most of you received the journal, the Asia Pacific Population Journal. In that, there's an article on research, towards a research agenda on CRVS in Asia Pacific, and highlighted this issue. I think in order to really sustain that interest, to really secure what we see as long-term engagement, we need to really demonstrate its real benefit. I think this is one point. Second, just a very quick note on the coordination. I know it's difficult, but why we're here now, this is the real outcome of a very coordinated effort among many development partners and country engagement. So I do see it's challenging, but there's a real progress. And I think what's very important is that we also, through this regional program, through a global engagement and other possibilities to really build the kind of leadership will foster this kind of coordination. I think leadership development is so important across the board. Yeah, let me stop here.
I'm aware of the time. We have closely come to the end of this session. I wanted to give you actually the floor, all of you, for maybe a last 1 minute, if you want to, from your perspective of today's discussion, what do you take away? If we can start maybe with Helge, do you have any last suggestion you want to share?
Well, to work on, to work on institutional cooperation, I think, and trust is a very important issue.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Haishan, any last thoughts? Or you already? Okay. Lisa? Good. The Minister, if you want to say a few.
Thank you, Anis. I just wanted to add just a little bit more onto the buy-in at the political level. In Samoa, we have a national strategy for the development of Samoa, and that binds all ministers, cabinet ministers, to achieving that. The mission statement for that high-level strategy is a quality life for all. Now, that binds all the ministers to achieving that goal. And any efforts by different ministries towards that high-level strategy is automatically binding of all other ministries. So I just wanted to share that if you have similar situations, that's how we've managed to make sure that every stakeholder from the highest level is committed to other ministries' efforts to achieving a quality life for all and for Samoa. In the issue of trust, and Samoa, as I said, we've gone out to right down to the grassroots level, people that don't really understand why all this data is being collected and what do we do with them. So our efforts to educate them and to continue to involve them in our efforts to collect from them the information that we need, like CRVS, in the community level, is for them. They need to know why it's important for them to provide it and how comfortable they are to providing that, and that the information will not be used against them. I think we buy their trust, then we've gone a long way towards achieving any of the goals that we, at the higher levels, come up with. I just wanted to share that, and I thank you for your contribution.
Okay, I think we have reached the end of this session. I think we had a very, very good, thought-provoking discussion, very comprehensive, lots of different angles. I will not make an attempt to summarize it, but I have noted down three main points that I take away from this discussion that I want quickly to share with you. The first one is about the Haishan's point, and a couple of others mentioned it, the timing of this debate. It's the moment of truth to some extent. Some of you have said this agenda has been out there for quite some time. It's not every other day 2015, but there will be a 2016, we know. But I think the moment, the momentum of this debate, the data revolution, the SDGs discussions that will take place next year, the possibility to mobilize external resources from the international community and development partners, but maybe also to lobby out some money from national governments is now and in the next year. So I think we should really use this opportunity to make inroads in this agenda. Secondly, I think we all agree it's really complex. It's really difficult. And it's so complex because it's not only about statistics, it's not only about civil registration, it's about issues linked to the whole organization of the state. It's about capacity development, institution building. It's about trust. It's about the laws. It's about judiciary system. It's very complex. And this we have to acknowledge. And this means also one needs to be patient and to take time. And also one needs to discuss with the different stakeholders in society where you want to go as a society. What's your final aim? I think that was very clear. The good news, though, is that we also heard that there are a possibility for leapfrogging. We have technology, we have the data revolution, so we can possibly make a quicker inroad than decades ago. Final last point, in terms of the action items, concrete action items, well, we have action items to take away on the global level, and it's good to see that many development partners are here and want to push this forward. There will be further discussions. There's also obviously an agenda for the regional level. And finally, we all said that this change has to be really made at the local level, at the national level. This is a national agenda. And again, it's a link between, on the one hand, trust and advocacy and convincing, and on the other hand, very technical issues. So I leave it with here. Paris 21 stands ready to support countries and the international community to help advocate for civil registration and vital statistics. A big thanks to the panelists. Please, thank you so much for being here and sticking to the time. And thanks all of you for coming and for sharing your comments and thoughts. The session is closed. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the panelists and the delegates for such a thought-provoking special session. In a slight change to the programme, we will now take a break for refreshments. May I ask that you please return to the conference room at 3 o'clock, ready to complete deliberations of item 3 of the conference agenda, consideration of the draft ministerial declaration. We will then conclude proceedings with the final special session for the day, the role of CRVS in preventing child marriage in Asia and the Pacific. This promises to be another fascinating session and will pick up on many of the important issues raised previously during the conference. Thank you very much, and may I please remind you to return to the conference room ready to finalise item 3 at 3 o'clock.